everything, or I wouldn't have given it up, cancer or no cancer, but I...
For decades, rumors swirled around John Wayne's personal life. His secretary knew the truth. She saw the affairs, the lies, and the cover-ups firsthand. But she stayed quiet until 1983. That's when she released her tell-all memoir. Inside were confessions that shattered Wayne's clean image, stories about his racist comments, his cowardly war record, and his abusive final years. America's cowboy hero was nothing like the man on screen. The truth was far more disturbing than anyone imagined. John Wayne's story began far from Hollywood. He was born Marion Robert Morrison on May 26, 1907, in Winterset, Iowa, weighing an astonishing 13 pounds at birth. His father, Clyde Morrison, was a pharmacist who had once played college football. But life for young Marion wasn't easy. His name sounded too feminine, and children teased him constantly, calling him a girl. The bullying led to regular schoolyard fights, leaving him determined to build a tougher image for himself. When his younger brother Robert died, Marion even changed his middle name to Michael, as if trying to rewrite who he was. The boy who hated his name would later become the very face of rugged masculinity on screen. A big part of his new identity came from a dog. When the family moved to Glendale, California in 1916, Marion grew inseparable from his massive Airedale Terrier. They walked everywhere together, including past the local fire station. The firefighters nicknamed the dog Big Duke and the boy Little Duke, and the name stuck. In fact, the nickname became so natural that people soon forgot his real name. By the time he earned his first movie credit in 1929, he was billed simply as Duke Morrison. A boy's bond with his dog had given him the identity that would follow him into history. Life in California was not as promising as the Morrisons had hoped. The family's attempt to run a ranch in the Mojave Desert collapsed completely, draining their savings and leaving them nearly broke. Marion helped however he could, delivering medicine for his father and selling newspapers on street corners. The hardship left a deep mark, teaching him the value of hard work and the fear of financial insecurity. Those lessons would push him to fight for a career in Hollywood with a relentless drive. At first, his dream was not acting, but football. By 1925, he had earned a scholarship at the University of Southern California, playing as a 6'4" lineman. But one afternoon at the beach, while body surfing, a wave slammed him hard into the sand and dislocated his shoulder. He tried to keep playing, but the injury ruined his game, and eventually he lost his scholarship. Without it, he couldn't afford school. Forced to leave, he returned to a summer job at Fox Films' prop department, a decision that would accidentally set him on the path to stardom. One unlikely connection soon changed everything. Tom Mix, already the most famous cowboy actor in Hollywood, wanted tickets to USC football games. Marion could get them, and in return, Mix used his influence to secure him a job as a prop boy and occasional extra. It was a simple trade, but it placed him inside a studio that would shape his future. That small favor connected two generations of cowboy heroes, with Mix unknowingly helping his eventual successor. But Hollywood didn't welcome him with open arms. In 1930, he landed the lead in a major film called The Big Trail. The studio believed he was the perfect pioneer type, but executives thought his name, Marion Morrison, sounded wrong for a hero. Without asking him, they renamed him John Wayne. After rejecting Anthony Wayne, which they claimed sounded too Italian, he disliked the name at first, calling it plain and uninspired, but he had no choice. That decision, made in a studio office without his input, created the name that would become legendary. The film itself was a disaster. Shot in a new widescreen format that almost no theaters could show, it lost millions and flopped badly. Wayne was dropped by the studio and branded as box office poison. For nearly a decade, he was stuck in cheap westerns known as Poverty Row films. He made over 70 of them between 1930 and 1939, often for as little as $75 a week. He sometimes slept at the studio to save money and ate whatever scraps he could find. In some movies, like the ones where he played Singing Sandy, his singing voice was even dubbed because he couldn't carry a tune. The experience left him humiliated. watching other actors like Gary Cooper rise to fame, while he remained stuck in forgettable roles. When John Ford decided to cast John Wayne in Stagecoach back in 1939, most of Hollywood thought he had lost his mind. Executives wanted Gary Cooper, not a little-known actor who had been stuck making cheap westerns on Poverty Row for almost a decade. Even Wayne himself wasn't sure he deserved the role. When Ford asked who should play the lead, Wayne suggested Lloyd Nolan. Ford looked at him and said, "Hell, Duke, can't you play it?" It was a risk that seemed like career suicide for Ford, but it turned out to be one of the smartest gambles in film history. Stagecoach changed everything for Wayne. Up until then, he had been earning barely enough to get by, stuck in forgettable films that no one remembered. But Ford knew how to use him. He filmed Wayne in ways that made him look larger than life, letting audiences connect with his quiet confidence and natural charm. Overnight, Wayne went from a struggling actor to Hollywood royalty. Ford had promised him the film would make him a star, and he was right. Wayne went on to dominate the box office for the next 25 years, holding a spot as one of the top stars longer than almost anyone else in movie history. The war years only made his image bigger. While other men fought overseas, Wayne stayed home, classified 4F because of old injuries and family obligations. Still, he played the soldier on screen in films like Flying Tigers, The Fighting Seabees, and They Were Expendable. Audiences poured into theaters to watch him fight battles they read about in the news. The contradiction was striking. Wayne became the country's favorite war hero without ever setting foot on a battlefield. The success made him one of Hollywood's most profitable stars, and when he appeared in The Longest Day in 1962, his performance helped the film bring in more than $50 million, the modern equivalent of over $500 million. In 1950, Wayne finally earned an Academy Award nomination for his role as Sergeant Stryker in Sands of Iwo Jima. It was a performance full of grit and emotion, proving he could do more than just stand tall in the saddle. Critics were surprised by his depth, and many believed he would take home the Oscar. Instead, the award went to Broderick Crawford, and Wayne's film walked away empty-handed despite 4 nominations. The loss haunted him for decades, and some whispered that his outspoken politics had cost him the win. It wasn't until 1970, 20 years later, that he finally got his Oscar for True Grit. Wayne's personal life was just as dramatic as his career. During the early 1940s, he had a scandalous affair with Marlene Dietrich, one of the most glamorous women in Hollywood. Both were married, yet they carried on so openly that it became what insiders called the worst-kept secret in Hollywood. Their relationship was even discovered through FBI surveillance, since Dietrich, being German-born, was being watched during the war. Despite the gossip, Wayne later admitted she was one of the most fascinating women he had ever known. His wife, Josephine Saenz, took the affair especially hard. A devout Catholic from a prominent family, she was devastated by his repeated infidelities. She even asked priests to come into their home and confront Wayne about his behavior. The clashes often ended with Wayne storming out, furious at the interference. Their marriage eventually ended in divorce, but Josephine never gave up on him spiritually. She prayed for his conversion every day for more than 30 years, a prayer that was finally answered on his deathbed when Wayne embraced the Catholic faith. There were also long-standing rumors of a deep romantic bond between Wayne and Maureen O'Hara, his fiery red-haired co-star in several films. Friends claimed their affair lasted years, often meeting secretly at Wayne's Arizona ranch. O'Hara was strong-willed and independent, and many believed she was the one woman Wayne truly loved, but never married. Even his son admitted she was the only woman who could match him in strength and spirit. When Wayne died in 1979, O'Hara was said to have fallen into a deep depression, mourning not just a colleague but someone who had meant far more to her. On screen, Wayne continued to evolve. His role in Red River in 1948 shocked audiences when he played a tough, often cruel cattle baron willing to kill those who crossed him. Even John Ford admitted he hadn't realized Wayne could act on such a powerful level until that performance. The film became one of the most celebrated westerns ever made, praised for showing Wayne as more than a one-dimensional hero. Then came The Searchers in 1956, a film that pushed Wayne into darker territory. As Ethan Edwards, he played a bitter, racist man consumed by the search for his kidnapped niece. The role was deeply unsettling, showing Wayne as a hero whose hatred and obsession made him nearly as dangerous as the enemies he hunted. Critics later praised the film for its raw honesty about racism and the violent roots of America's westward expansion. At the time, it was shocking to see America's favorite cowboy play such a disturbing character, but it proved Wayne's ability to take risks and left a lasting mark on cinema history. John Wayne's life off-screen was far from the heroic image he carried on film. His personal world was tangled with scandal, heartbreak, and choices that would haunt both him and the women closest to him. In the 1940s, he married Esperanza Diaz Ceballos Bauer, a striking actress from Mexico known by the nickname Chata. She had once lit up Spanish-language films, but carried with her a past that Hollywood whispered about. Born into a family tied to Mexico's darker underworld, Chata's fiery temper and heavy drinking soon turned their home into a battlefield. Her mother even moved in with them, adding to the chaos. The marriage lasted 8 years, and during that time, arguments often spilled into public view. It all came crashing down when Wayne discovered she was having an affair with Nicky Hilton, heir to the Hilton fortune and Elizabeth Taylor's first husband. Hilton had been staying in their home while Wayne was away filming, and what began as an act of hospitality spiraled into betrayal. The divorce that followed became one of the most bitter scandals in Hollywood, leaving Wayne nearly bankrupt after Chata walked away with a huge settlement. Chata never escaped the shadow of her past and died of a heart attack at only 40 years old. Even before the ink was dry on his divorce papers, Wayne had already started seeing Pilar Palete, a beautiful actress from Peru. Their relationship began in secret, while he was still legally tied to Chata. When Pilar became pregnant, Wayne feared the damage a scandal could do to his carefully built image as America's moral cowboy. He pressured her into ending the pregnancy, a decision that went against both their Catholic faiths. The abortion left Pilar devastated. She fell into a deep depression that followed her through much of their marriage. The guilt, combined with the loneliness of being uprooted constantly to follow Wayne's work, slowly broke her down. Her despair reached a terrifying point one night in Louisiana during one of Wayne's film shoots. Exhausted and unable to sleep, she turned to sleeping pills, taking far more than was safe. The overdose pushed her into hallucinations so severe that she lost her grip on reality. In that fragile state, she took a razor blade and tried to end her life. Crew members found her bleeding in her trailer and saved her, but the incident was a brutal sign of how far she had fallen. Instead of rushing to her side and putting his career on hold, Wayne chose to keep filming. He arranged for nurses to take Pilar back to California while he stayed behind to finish the movie. To the outside world, he was the symbol of strength and family values. Behind the curtain, he was a man who placed his work above everything else, even his wife's life. That pattern of work before family continued through their 19-year marriage, leaving Pilar with scars that never healed. Wayne's personal troubles were only part of his darker legacy. His professional choices also led to tragedies no one could have imagined. When he insisted on playing Genghis Khan in the film The Conqueror, the casting was already seen as a disaster. His American drawl and Western mannerisms made the performance almost laughable. But the real horror lay in where the film was shot. The crew spent months working in the Utah desert, not far from the Nevada test site, where the U.S. government had carried out massive nuclear bomb tests. At the time, officials assured them the land was safe. It wasn't. The soil and air were saturated with radioactive fallout. One day, someone brought a Geiger counter to the set. When Wayne held it up, the machine crackled violently, a sound that meant the radiation levels were dangerously high. The cast and crew didn't understand the danger, and filming continued. To make matters worse, producer Howard Hughes had tons of the contaminated sand hauled to Hollywood studios for indoor scenes. That decision exposed even more people long after filming in Utah had ended. The price of that mistake was devastating. Out of the 220 people involved in the production, nearly half would go on to develop cancer. Among them were John Wayne himself, who died of stomach cancer, and Susan Hayward, who suffered multiple cancers before dying at 56. Director Dick Powell, Agnes Moorehead, Pedro Armendariz, and Lee Van Cleef were also among the many victims. Even Wayne's children, who had visited the set, later faced serious health problems. John Wayne's image as a symbol of American patriotism has always carried a shadow many fans didn't want to face. When the United States entered World War II in December 1941, Wayne was 34 years old and already a father of 4. He was given a 3A deferment, which meant he didn't have to serve because of family dependency. At first, that seemed reasonable, but the controversy grew when his status was changed to 1A, meaning he was now eligible for the draft, and he still never went. Soon after, it was changed again to 2A, which meant he was considered more valuable to the national interest as a Hollywood star than as a soldier. Veterans who left their families and jobs to fight overseas saw this as unfair. The anger only deepened because Wayne was starring in war movies at the very same time, playing the kind of hero he refused to be in real life. Behind the scenes, Republic Pictures made sure Wayne stayed far from the battlefield. Its president, Herbert J. Yates, told Wayne in no uncertain terms that if he tried to enlist, the studio would sue him. When Wayne's draft status changed to 1A in 1943, Republic Pictures even lobbied the Selective Service Board to protect him. Yates claimed Wayne was their only A-list actor under contract, and that losing him would cripple their wartime productions. According to records, Wayne was warned that joining the military would ruin his career and finances. The threats worked. While other actors risked their lives, Wayne stayed in Hollywood making films like Flying Tigers in 1942 and The Fighting Seabees in 1944. To many Americans, this made him a symbol of Hollywood's hypocrisy during the war. The situation grew even more painful for Wayne when he tried to join director John Ford's Navy Photographic Unit in the Office of Strategic Services. He wrote several letters to Ford, almost begging to be included. In one letter, he asked if Ford could get him into the Marines or his OSS outfit, adding, "No, I'm not drunk. I just hate to ask for favors. But for Christ's sake, you can suggest, can't you?" Ford never replied. His silence was devastating, especially since the unit was dangerous and had already lost 12 men, with Ford himself badly wounded. Adding insult to injury, Wayne actually filled out a 24-page OSS application in 1943 and was approved. But the acceptance letter was mistakenly sent to his estranged wife, who never forwarded it to him. Some say this error robbed him of redemption, but critics argue he could have tried harder. Ford later mocked him on movie sets, reminding him that he grew rich while others died. The weight of not serving never left Wayne. His widow, Pilar, later said he built his super patriot image to make up for staying home. Friends admitted that this failure haunted him for life. On movie sets, when directors like Ford teased him about it, Wayne would storm off in anger. During his USO tour of the South Pacific in 1943 and 1944, battle-hardened troops greeted him with indifference, and some showed quiet contempt. Historian William Manchester wrote that soldiers saw through his screen persona and gave him little respect. Writer Gary Wills later described Wayne's over-the-top patriotism as an obvious attempt to hide his guilt. The criticism grew sharper because of the clear contrast with Jimmy Stewart. While Wayne acted in war films, Stewart was flying dangerous B-24 bombing missions over Berlin, Bremen, Frankfurt, Brunswick, and Schweinfurt. He completed 20 combat missions, including leading a 1,000-plane raid on Berlin. Stewart earned 2 Distinguished Flying Crosses with oak leaf clusters, an Air Medal with 3 oak leaf clusters, and the French Croix de Guerre with palm. He had even been underweight at first, but trained until he qualified. After the war, Stewart continued to serve in the Air Force Reserves, eventually reaching the rank of Brigadier General in 1959. At 58, he even flew as an observer on a B-52 bombing mission during the Vietnam War. His military service lasted 27 years, 2 months, and 9 days, and he was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. Against such real heroism, Wayne's Hollywood image looked hollow. In 1970, Wayne finally won his first and only Oscar for True Grit at age 62. The role of Rooster Cogburn, a one-eyed, hard-drinking U.S. Marshal, became the highlight of his long career. At the ceremony, Barbra Streisand handed him the award as he competed against Peter O'Toole, Dustin Hoffman, and Richard Burton. In his acceptance speech, Wayne noted with irony that he had often accepted Oscars for his friends, including John Ford and Gary Cooper, but never for himself until that night. The film was a major success and later inspired a celebrated 2010 remake. 6 years earlier, in 1964, Wayne had faced his greatest personal battle when doctors removed his entire left lung and 2 ribs after diagnosing him with cancer. He smoked 5 to 6 packs of cigarettes a day, about 100 to 120 cigarettes daily, and the surgery was considered a massive risk. He spent more than a week in intensive care before finally recovering. Unlike many stars of the time, Wayne openly admitted his illness, calling it the Big C, and encouraged Americans to get preventive checkups. He was declared cancer-free 5 years later, but he never quit smoking. By 1979, he was fighting stomach cancer, which ultimately claimed his life on June 11th of that year. His passion project, The Alamo, released in 1960, nearly destroyed him financially. What started as a $3 to $4 million production exploded into $12 million, equal to around $120 million today. Wayne poured $1.5 million of his own money into the film, taking out second mortgages and even putting his vehicles up as collateral. He spent 15 years working on it, insisting on building a full replica of the Alamo mission in Texas. His daughter Aissa later said the movie was his way of proving his patriotism after avoiding service in World War II. The film earned 7 Oscar nominations and 1 Best Sound, but the massive cost kept it from being profitable. Wayne lost his entire investment, leaving him in debt for years. Just when his career seemed secure, Wayne set off another storm with his 1971 Playboy interview. In it, he said, "I believe in white supremacy until the blacks are educated to a point of responsibility. I don't believe in giving authority and positions of leadership and judgment to irresponsible people." He went further, saying Native Americans had been selfish in trying to keep their land, and he dismissed films like Easy Rider as perverted. The backlash was immediate and lasting. Decades later, in 2016, the California State Assembly voted against creating a John Wayne Day, and organizations like the NAACP and the Democratic Party of Orange County called for removing his name from the Orange County Airport. His son later tried to defend the comments as being taken out of context, but the damage was permanent. Pat Stacey never imagined that taking a secretarial job in 1972 would change her life forever. She was a divorced woman in her 30s when she stepped into the world of John Wayne, who was already a 65-year-old Hollywood legend. At first, it was only a job, filling in after Wayne's longtime secretary retired. But during the filming of MCQ in Seattle the following year, something unexpected happened. Their working relationship slowly turned into a romance. The 30-year age gap shocked many, yet Pat gave Wayne something he had been missing despite 3 marriages and countless affairs: a sense of peace and steady devotion. She later described him as affectionate and gentle, words few would have expected from a man who played Hollywood's toughest cowboy. Their bond grew stronger while filming Brannigan in London, and though Wayne's health began to decline, Pat never left his side. When he died in 1979, he left her $30,000 in his will, far more than what he left his former secretary, a sign of how deeply he cared for her. Wayne's last movie, The Shootist, brought a haunting parallel to his real life. At 68, he played John Bernard Books, an aging gunfighter told he had only weeks to live. The role was prophetic, At the time, Wayne was not terminally ill, but just 3 years later he was diagnosed with stomach cancer. His earlier lung surgery had already taken a toll on his health, and filming at the high altitude of Carson City left him struggling to breathe. He pushed himself to perform his own stunts anyway, including falling hard onto the floor again and again. He even fought to change the script when the director wanted his character shot in the back, saying he had never done that in any film and wasn't about to start. The movie became his farewell to the screen, and not long after, life caught up with art in the most painful way. As his illness advanced, Wayne began to change in ways that startled everyone around him. Pat Stacy, who loved him through those difficult years, later admitted that the disease turned him into a man who was less loving and often quick to anger. The calm and charming figure the public adored sometimes gave way to sudden outbursts that shocked his friends and family. She said he couldn't stand feeling the world slip away from him, so he lashed out at the people who cared most. It was not just pain or frustration. It was a heartbreaking transformation of his very spirit. In one of the darkest moments, Wayne asked Pat to help him end his life. At UCLA Medical Center, in terrible pain, he looked at her and asked for his Smith & Wesson revolver, saying he wanted to end it himself. The request broke her heart. She refused, as did his son, Patrick. It was a sign of how unbearable his suffering had become, and how the strong, unshakable image he had built on screen had been destroyed by the reality of his illness. Even small daily struggles became battles. Pat described moments when Wayne tried to eat something as simple as grape nuts cereal, only to throw the box across the room in anger when his body rejected it. Tapioca pudding, chosen for how gentle it was, ended up on the hospital floor after another failed attempt. These scenes were painful reminders that the man who once seemed unstoppable was being stripped of his dignity, unable to control even the most basic part of life. Pat knew his rage came from fear as much as frustration, and she watched helplessly as each day made him more fragile. Yet even in those final days, there were moments of tenderness. 2 days before his death, Wayne surprised everyone by finally converting to the Catholic faith. For years, he had joked that he would do it at the end, calling himself a cardiac Catholic. At last, with the help of a local archbishop, he embraced the church he had long delayed joining. His family later shared that he regretted not doing it sooner, saying life had always been too busy. When the end finally came on June 11, 1979, he was surrounded by family. Pat leaned close and asked if he knew who she was. With clear eyes and steady voice, he said, "Of course I know who you are. You're my girl. I love you." Those would be his last words. Hours later, he slipped into a sleep from which he would not wake, and the world lost one of its most enduring stars. 4 years later, Pat released her memoir, Duke, a Love Story. The book revealed intimate details of Wayne's last years, from his health struggles to the emotional turmoil he tried to hide from the public. Some criticized it for being too blunt, but readers were drawn to the raw honesty of her account. She confirmed rumors about his affairs, his pain, and even the controversial claim that filming The Conqueror near radioactive sites had played a role in his illness. The memoir painted a picture of a man who was far from the untouchable hero fans had imagined, but it also showed the depth of his humanity. Out of his suffering came a legacy that continues to help others. In 1981, the John Wayne Cancer Institute was founded, carrying his name into the fight against the disease that claimed his life. The institute went on to make groundbreaking advances, training doctors, publishing research, and developing new treatments that have saved lives worldwide. What began as a tribute to a fallen star grew into a force for hope and healing, ensuring that Wayne's final battle was not in vain.